The last piece here is I want to show you how we can respond to an event like focusing or defocusing inside of a component. So the idea here is when I go through and I edit the dollar signs right here, I would then, when I leave this, I lose focus on this, I would then update this text to match that right there. So the check looks the same. Um, our ECheck, we're not going to make somebody type it out all the way. There's other checks and balances we can do to make sure it's a valid number and it matches and whatnot. And it's not a paper check, right? We're not putting it out there where somebody can just tweak the numbers on it and then all of a sudden you give it to a bank and yeah, there you go. I don't have to check that consistency. The reason behind that is just to make sure nobody took a 9 and changed it to an 8 or a 1 and changed it to a 9 or something like that to add to the amount of money that's or reduce the amount of money that's being transferred. Um, so um, we need to do a couple things to get ourselves up and ready for that. And I got to decide if I want to do the fuller or not. But let's come back up to our display. So one of the things we definitely need to do is we need to have, and we need to have a savable version of the uh, dollar display, right? Full dollar display. Let's call that. Let's call the full dollar display. That's what we call it. And so this is just going to be a label, not even an interesting label. And the label, I think I can probably just put it in the window itself. Um, and the text, I'm going to give it some initial text, which is going to be 0 and 00/100. Okay, well, I thought about this now. Let me come back to that thought in a second. But let me take full dollar display. Let's put it on the display and go from there. Dot grid. Row is going to be 3. Column is going to be 0. Let's put that in my display. Oops, invalid syntax. Oh yeah, I put the other. I never took out this stuff down here. Let's take that out. All right, so 0, 0. Now, the dollars is normally justified all the way to the right. We probably actually want this to span 2 and put the dollars over here as a separate text item. Again, that's something you can figure out later on. I wouldn't do all this exercise for you, leave something for you to go. But I want to show you this next bit. So I am going to take the lazy route in the view of time. So instead of adding in the dollar amount one, I'm going to use the date one as a way. And so when I put something inside of here for the date, I want to update this one over here. So what do I want to have happen? Well, now that we have this display, no, not this display. Now we have this display. I can actually go through and add some behavior to the one up above. Now, I don't know that the order of this necessarily matters. I'm going to do it down below just so it's logical to what we've been working, the order we've been adding things in to some degree. So it's not the payee we're looking at. Well, we might as well use the payee because that one's equally arbitrary. But what we want to have happen is when a specific event happens on the payee, basically I leave the focus of that. I want to have something happen in the other one. So let's start simple here. So we're going to do self.payee input, right? We're going to go to the payee input. And then we're going to bind that. Now, what that means, binding is a GUI concept. We're going to bind an event handler to when the event happens. And so we want to bind to is on the focus out event. There's a bunch of these events, and you can search which ones they are. Focus in, focus out, key down, key up. These are typical events you'd see. And we're going to bind that to some method. Now we saw this before with the submit button, right? The command, we bind to a method right here. But in this case, this method doesn't exist yet, and it takes a specific parameter inside of here. So we're going to define that method like I talked about before right here. It takes a parameter E, which is the event that's being passed on. When I hit a button, I don't need an event, right? What happened? I hit the button. I know what button I had. I told you what button it was, right? Well, here E tells me information about which event it was and details about that event. The mouse was clicked. Well, what was the XY location when the mouse was clicked? So I want to, when that's done, let's just start with print lost focus. So we're going to just start with doing that and seeing if when I leave the payee one, if this pops up. So let's run this again. And I go into this, I type it, I leave. Oh, I lost focus. So when I left that, I lost focus. I actually haven't to do anything. I delete that. I leave, I lost focus. I enter it, I leave it, I lost focus. Right? So that shows every time I leave this box, I can go and interact with any other component that I want to out there. So for example, I could say self dot full dollar display dot configure. I think this is configure. I think this is the right way to do it. Try to do it from memory here. Text is equal to changed to plus self dot payee input dot get. All right, so we're just gonna put something inside there so we can see that we're changing that in some way. So I go through, I type some stuff inside of there. I hit tab. See, change to. I delete that. I hit tab, change to, right? So it's updating this every time I lose focus right there. Now, focus listeners, they sound like a great thing. Sometimes they're a pain in the butt. Like there's a tendency to want to do validation in focus listeners, and you can, but then it often means it's a very uncomfortable user experience. I personally am a fan of I validate when somebody hits a button, so that way I'm not having things flash red and unflash red and change around all the time when a user's navigating through, because they don't necessarily have to work in a specific order. But that's a preference. There's a style to it, and every display is slightly differently. So that is the behavior there. So what do we want to have happen? Well, what we want to have happen is when I put the dollar amount here, I want to update this display with that text. So really probably what I want to do here, and this, again, I have a couple things that's off because I have it on the wrong field. There's a few things you're going to change. That's why I'm getting it started for you, but having you go from there. But I probably want to first, and the reason why I created it separately is I probably want to first uh, well, here, right? So I'm going to hard code this. You'd be getting this from your field, but I can show you a little bit of the code. So valid, it's going to return whether it's valid or not. And if it's valid, it's going to get the amount. And then you can say if valid, then there's your other function here, process check amount, right? And then probably what I want to do here is to set the full dollar display to the results of process check amount. That's the whole idea of this. This is the structure of the code that you're going to put on the right one. So that means to get all this working, you have to make sure you validate the check amount. Well, let me put a placeholder inside of there. Return true, capital T, true, comma 123.123.45, right? So we just give this a run and see. Put something inside of there. Oh, what did I miss? Validate check. Oh, validate check amount is not defined. Yes, because I can't forget that I'm not coding in Java. I'm coding in Python. Self.validate check amount. And that also means I need to do a self.process check amount. Java, it's implicit, doesn't require that. All right, so now, it takes one positional argument, but two were given. Um, for which one? Validate, check them out. Oh, I don't need to pass in a value there. It gets it from the display. It knows where it is already, apparently. That's the way I set it up. But you can modify that if you want to. Okay, so it's not breaking anymore, at least I don't think. But then the idea is that this is currently returning done. This is going to return something along the lines of 123 and 45 slash 100. So that's what this is supposed to return when it's all said and done. So let's see if that does anything here. Yes, there you go. So there's the structure of what we have going on here. Now, the idea is it's supposed to do it based off of what I type in, not just some hard-coded amounts. But I wanted to show you this whole structure right here, which is the listener on the focus out binding that will validate the amount. And if the amount is valid, that's going to set it to this amount that got configured for the check. So the last key here is how the heck do I finish this process check amount? Well, this is just straight a logical problem. It doesn't make it easy, but it's just simply saying I'm taking a number and I'm